اخواني خواتي، في هذا اليوم يتجدد رهان العالم على الشباب، وتتجدد معه مسؤوليتنا العظيمة لخلق التغيير الإيجابي المستدام. في دولة الإمارات نحن محظوظين بأن اليوم وكل يوم هو يوم للشباب، فأصبح نموذج بمجهود الشباب هو السائد بيننا. فكل مشروع وكل مركز وكل سياسة نضعها تكون من الشباب وإليهم. وشعار اليوم العالمي للشباب في هذا العام أتى أيضاً بتوصية من الشباب حول العالم، وبالأخص بعد جائحة كورونا وتأثيرها على النظم الغذائية. وأكيد ما نقدر نتكلم عن النظم الغذائية بدون ما نشرك أختي وزميلتي معالي مريم المهيري، وزيرة الدولة للأمن الغذائي والمائي. معاليها نموذج للشخصية الإماراتية المتفانية في ترجمة رؤية القيادة. وقبل ما أبدأ أبغي أنوه بأن الجلسة اليوم بتكون باللغة الإنجليزية، حرصاً على إيصال جهود دولتنا الغالية في هذا المجال المهم لأكبر عدد ممكن حول العالم. The United Arab Emirates is taking big bets on saying that where we begin is with youth. Partnered with a dynamite Ministry of Food Security that oversees our nation's boldest and most innovative strategy to bring equitable food security at home and abroad, Her Excellency مريم المهيري is the UAE's MVP this year for the UN's International Youth Day, which is focused explicitly on equitable food security worldwide. My dear colleague, in my 5 years working alongside you, I've come to admire and respect your great ability at balancing complex strategy with effective action. And you understand that our mere convening here is not going to fill cupboards for the world's most vulnerable. Action is going to, an action based on a good strategy, an action led by youth. Your efforts have created long-lasting impacts in the United Arab Emirates, where there's extreme water scarcity and high temperatures that results in imports for almost 90% of our food. The pandemic and climate change are making our imports model unsustainable, and you are inviting youth today to join the national dialogue on food security and taking leading roles. Youth were also included as part of your table in the UAE's NFSS dialogues, preparing for the Food Systems Summit that's going to happen soon in September, and one that happened last month. I understand you're laying groundwork for youth to be at the UAE table as well for the UN's Food System Forum, the biggest event of its kind on food systems and food security. This is maverick, to be honest, and it sets the tone for the best practice or the golden standard to become a baseline for youth engagement in all of our global future discussions and dialogues. So, Your Excellency Mariam, it is both timely and I think it's our distinct honor to welcome you here for a discussion that carries significant weight on how we will all live today and survive tomorrow. What could be more important than the basic food, water, nutrition that serves as our very foundation for life, and especially for our children and our grandchildren's life. So we're so glad to have you here with us today, and I'm so excited to ask you questions that most frequently come directly from young people throughout the Emirates. And a few, maybe I'm very curious to know about myself. So let me start with a one-on-one and let us bring people along. Let's start with the basics. How do you define food security and why does it matter?
First of all, thank you so much, Shemma, for having me. Thank you so much for the youth that excite everyone in every sector that they're at. And what you said, Shemma, is so true. You know, it's funny that the word food security has really become a media buzzword in the last few months, and which is really good because people are now more interested to know about it. And what better way to have International Youth Day around the subject of food systems, when actually today we're also starting with the UN Food Systems Summit pre-summit as well. So it's all coming down to our food systems and what the youth can do in helping us enhance our food systems. Let me first start with, as you said, the definition of food security. So food security for a country is when a country enables its citizens, its residents to have access to safe, sufficient, nutritious and affordable food to live an active and healthy lifestyle at all times, even in emergency situations. So that's in a nutshell your definition. Many people may think, oh, is food security agriculture? Agriculture has a link to it, but we're a country, as you said, that imports over 90% of its food, yet we are food secure. Why? Because we have enabled the infrastructure to have access to food at all times. And what better test that we've gone through than the last few months to actually show the world that even though we import most of our food, we haven't experienced 1 hour or 1 minute of anything being empty on the shelves. So this is a testimony as well of our power in food security, even though we're not an agricultural country.
And that's a testament to the kind of leadership we have. I think it's very crucial to know what are the key challenges then that we face in the UAE with respect to food security.
Okay, so first of all, the obvious ones that you see around us. So we're a desert country. Our climate is not one that sort of serves large-scale crop growing. We have very little annual rainfall. So these are the obvious things that we are not an agriculture country as per se. Second, if you look over the years, how quickly we have grown as a nation and how diverse we are as cultures, as people. We have over 200 nationalities living in the UAE. Everyone has different tastes, everyone has different food needs. And so putting those things in place, the challenge that we're facing now is how we're behaving around food. So how much food we're wasting, a portion size, what we're actually eating as well. So these are the two main challenges that I see. So our environmental climatic challenges, and the second is our consumer behavior.
How does the UAE then compare to other nations with respect to food security?
So every country has its own set of challenges and has its own set of, let's say, strengths as well. So let's look at our strengths, because we just spoke about our challenges. We've, over the years, really built an infrastructure that I would say is world-class. When we think of our airlines, when we think of our ports, when we think of our network, when you think of the actual consumer market that we have, even though we're just over 9 million people in the UAE, but our consumer market is actually over 2 billion because of the amazing infrastructure that we've built. And because of that, we've been able to bring in supplies of food to the UAE. Not ignoring as well the fact of all the infrastructure we have in the country, the cooling facilities, the stores. Also our private sector play a huge role in this as well. So they too have their means and their networks and their infrastructure that they're able to operate at a commercial rate and still be able to do their business and make profits. So this is our strength, and this is why, even though we're importing 90% of our food, we are food secure. But we also, or this is something our leadership have taught us, is to always look in front. What's going to happen in the next 10 years? What's going to happen in the next 15 years? And this is why we're taking the steps we're taking now. This is why we have now a minister in charge for food security. This is why we have a plan, the National Food Security Strategy. This is why we have the Emirates Food Security Council, because we are getting ready for the challenges that we know are coming. And the challenges are all linked to climate change. They are linked to our behavior around food on a global scale. They are linked to many places becoming water scarce. They are linked to the extreme climates that we're seeing around the world. I mean, look at the floodings that just happened in Germany. So all this is happening because we import a lot of our food and we're dependent on the global networks. We need to ensure that if we suddenly have a cut down in one of in the networks itself, we're still able to have access to safe, sufficient, nutritious, affordable food. And this is what we're building on, and this is what my team and I are actually working on day and night. And the last few months, Shama, has been, I would say, a big lessons learned and a big test for us as well. Yani, subhanAllah, when you think about it, I was appointed as a Minister of Food Security in 2017. We launched our strategy 2018. We set up the governance model, so the Emirates Food Security Council, in 2019. In 2020, COVID hit. So we were ready, okay? And this was the amazing part. Like, I already knew who my stakeholders are. I knew how to get hold of everyone. We convened, we started taking proactive measures. If we hadn't done those steps before, we would have had a lot of time wasted and we couldn't have been so efficient as we were. So it really shows, again, how foresight is in the DNA of our leadership and how they have taken the right steps so that we are where we are today.
And it's spectacular to hear this, especially that we are in our jubilee.
Yes.
And what are we preparing in food security for the next 50 years? I want you to tell us maybe how you came to care about food security and how you found yourself in your role overseeing it for the United Arab Emirates.
So I guess when I look back now, because you actually don't know what was triggered, but the sort of choices you make in life lead you to the next thing and the next thing. So if I think about it, I studied mechanical engineering. I did a few things on my own, so I set up my own businesses, and then I had an opportunity to come into the government, but I was looking more, because I started a hobby of diving and looking at the marine environment, I did start looking at fisheries in a different way, and I think this is where the journey of food security actually started. From then, going into the Ministry of Environment and Water at that time, I was then in charge of awareness programs for children, so looking at the marine environment. Then I was put in charge as a project manager for a very unique opportunity, which was the Sheikh Khalifa Marine Research Center in Guwain, which was set up to make juvenile, so these are baby fish, for the aquaculture industry. And this is, I think, where the real deal started with food security, because I had to then learn a lot about what aquaculture is, and it's a pillar, it's basically agriculture but in water. And looking at the opportunities that we have in growing fish, since we love fish and we eat a lot of fish and seafood proteins. So with that came more awareness and knowledge in that field. And I guess from there, I then became Assistant Undersecretary, and then I was asked to take the position of Minister of State for Food Security. So I guess this is the path.
We are so lucky to have you. Allah ya Rabbi يوفقك إن شاء الله في كل خطوة. I want to move now from the 101 maybe to the 2.2, 2.1 questions from youth. I've always thought that moral imagination is one of our most powerful agents. It's the courage to see reality as it is, but also to have the audacity to hope and work for a better tomorrow. And you've given us a glimpse into the reality of food security in the UAE. Paint a world for us, for youth, on what you envision a world with food security will be like.
Okay. This is where I say we become nation designers. And by the way, we are nation designers. So when I look out, you know, we're so blessed here in the Emirates Towers to have the great view of our towers in the UAE. And I just think, okay, as a nation designer, what can I imagine in the next 10, 20 years? And I could see things like high-rise buildings where you have vertical farms in it. I could see rooftops that were now not just the service facilities on it, but actually having green rooftops where people actually grow their food in it. I picture on balconies people are growing their food. So it's not about having arable land now. It's about really using any opportunity where you're using the sun. I mean, I often say, what do we have? We have the 3 S's. We have the sun, the sea, and the sand. Okay, how can we use those that we have in abundance to grow what we need? And so this is my imagination. Then I would love to see the youth coming into the sector much more. The average age now is somewhere between, depending on which country, 55 and 65, so it's quite a high age. We need to get the youth excited about the sector. And I don't like to call them, and they've often heard me say this, I'm not looking for the next farmer, I'm looking for the next agri-technologist, okay, because it is about technology now. When you're growing food now, you cannot grow without technology. So it is a different way of farming than the traditional farming. And so I'd love to see the youth come on board. I'd love to see more women coming into this sector. And we're actually seeing this happening very, very slowly. So I would say these are like the 3-4 things that I'd love to see. How we can use our 3 S's, how we can use our urban planning to actually have much more farming in the city itself. How we can have women and the youth more involved. So these are some of the things
I like this painting. It feels like the 3 S's are the imaginal cells of this caterpillar that's going to become a butterfly, inshallah. What do you think are the barriers? You talked about consumer behavior, and one of the questions we got from youth were, what do you think are the barriers within ourselves that prevent us from contributing to equitable food security?
Okay. Now, I often say, okay, I need to put myself in the shoes of others, right? Do I waste food? Do I put edible food in the bin? If I don't think about it, I do. Like we do at home without thinking about it. Why? Because, alhamdulillah, we've been brought up in a way that we actually have a lot of food. We usually have a diverse array of different dishes, and the fridges are always full, and it's always about fresh food, right? So when we grow up like that, it's kind of becomes a little bit like, oh, when something's a few days old, it's not fresh anymore. We either give it away, which is the good thing to do, but a lot ends up in the bin. So I often say it's kind of like just becoming a bit more aware of what you're doing with food, becoming a bit more aware of your portion size. And I think we have a lot to do when it comes to our kids. I think we overprotect them, we overfeed them. Why? Because it's all about, I want to make sure I'm nourishing, I want to make sure I give the best I can, but actually sometimes that's harming the kids, right? And I often see, like at school, some of the lunch packs, I mean, I know the mother means well, but actually this is training your child to have a big appetite and to start looking at much, much bigger portion sizes, which then affects the child then later on. Right? So I think it's now a lot about educating oneself, about reflecting a little bit, and then often people say, okay, but where do I look? How do I know what's good and what's not good? There's so much in the internet. I get so confused, and this is why we developed the National Nutritional Guideline with the Ministry of Health, just to help people, and also making it something about us and our environment here and the foods that we eat. Because you can often find things from outside, but we actually want to know a little bit more about our taste buds and what we like here. So we developed this guideline to help mothers and people at home to know about portion size, to know about what are the macronutrients that you need. And it's really, when you think a little bit about food, and the thing is, because it's always there, you don't think about it a lot. But I think when you start cooking yourself, which a lot of people have started doing in the past few months, exactly, they've started becoming more aware of portion size, because you are what you eat at the end of the day.
I believe that.
And I think giving food a bit of more respect, a bit more time, really makes it worth it, because your health is so connected to it. As young people, you may not feel it, but the long-term effects, and it comes later when your body becomes older, that you actually feel what junk you've put in yourself. And I really, and this is something we're also working on in the office, to try and look at how we can move to more sustainable diets. So it's not just about looking at your proteins and carbs and fats. It's looking at, where's this coming from? Can I buy these locally? Can they be more delicious? Look at kale, for example. Okay, kale is known as a superfood. You eat kale that's imported, it has no taste. But then there are farms here that grow kale, and the taste is much better, right? You don't have to put all the sauces on top of it to make yourself eat it, exactly.
I love this. I think this is something we're so excited to be working with you, inshallah, on, especially on raising awareness among youth and nudging them to understand, because I think all of us lack the academic bona fides of nutrition and food, and kind of what does it mean if something's 100 calories? Is it the quality of the food? Is it the ingredients? I think it's phenomenal. And you said there's so much information out there. There's like tons of books. I was at Kinokoni the other day, and I was looking at the just nutrition books, from intuitive eating to a book called The Obesity Code, to so many books, Your Brain on Fuel. Achieving the SDGs sounds just really powerful and important, and that it's such a big deal, especially that the United Nations General Assembly is coming up in a month or so. Can you talk about why it's important for all nations to work together to achieve the SDGs, especially with respect to food security, and how that works?
Okay, so SDGs for me is the essence of life. What do we as humans need? We need air. Like a few minutes of air, if it's cut off, you die. Then comes water. A few days of water, you cannot live without. Food is the next one. So air, water, and food is the essence of staying alive, right? Now, the SDGs are so centered around these essentials that we need to live. And you need to ensure that everyone has access to these, let's say, life life-ensuring things, right? And so food systems is an essential component of this. And we are today actually starting the UN Food Systems Pre-Summit, and it's all about food systems. It's all about how we can transform food systems. Now, for those who are listening who don't understand what food systems mean, food systems is basically the journey that your food takes. So it's from the seed that grows, you harvest, it goes into, let's say, some processing or no processing, it goes into transportation, it goes into your retail, it comes to you at home, you eat it, and it goes to the bin, right? This is a food system, okay? So the journey that the food takes at the moment, if you think about it, we have enough food for everyone in the world, yet a third of the food gets wasted, okay? So it's not efficient. Then we have 690 million people that go hungry every day. And this is the latest numbers, but I think it's actually increased now. We're waiting for the latest numbers to come out. So you have 690 million people who are going hungry, yet we have an obesity pandemic, right? Then you think about, we're talking about climate change, but a lot of our food gets put in the landfills and it's emitting greenhouse gases, right? So we have a very broken food system. And what we're trying to do now, this is like we're already in it's 9 years until the 2030 goals should be achieved. These 9 years is all about transforming our food systems to more efficient and more sustainable food systems. And this is why the UAE, so in our National Food Security Strategy, it's all about how we can harness technology and innovation. We are now looking at how we can actually grow food using the 3 S's maybe, using technology, using youth to be able to grow more food, but it needs to also make commercial sense. And it needs to not waste valuable resources like water, right? So this is the whole idea, and this is what makes it more complex. The last 50 years, we've been looking at the UAE as being a hub for trade, food trade. We want to continue that journey, but we now have another ambition, and that is to become a world exporter of knowledge and innovation when it comes to arid environments such as here and how you can grow here. And throughout the last 3-4 years, my team and I have really looked at how we can change the blueprint of the country when it comes to growing food. And that's why we're calling this new sector AgTech, right? Harnessing technology to grow food. This is where we want to get the youth excited as well, the agri-technologists. And now we're seeing, we're growing salmon, we're growing Pacific oysters, we're growing berries, blueberries. I don't know if you've had a chance to try locally grown blueberries. Like I said, kale, quinoa is also a food that's being grown with like a little bit salty water.
I have a question. So you said, okay, we're growing blueberries.
Yes.
I get they taste maybe better, even kale. But do they have the antibiotics that we always hear about, or when we hear about hormones in chicken?
So this is all when you look at industrial farming, and this comes in as an issue that when we're trying to push down prices of food and make it cheaper and cheaper, we're then going into the risk of going into more industrial farming. This is when, for example, in the poultry industry, so the chickens get squashed together in a smaller place. They pump them with hormones. They do whatever it takes to get quick fixes and quick, let's say, growth.
And high quantity.
Yes, exactly. To be able to deliver the big volumes so that they can reduce costs. Okay, so it's the economy of scale, basically. And the problem is, it's very difficult because you're having to find a balance. Not everyone can afford the organic, the foods that are, because that costs a lot of money as well. So you're giving the animal more space, you're letting it grow as it would in nature, and this takes longer. So as a farmer, you're going to have to feed this animal more, and you have to think of what to feed this animal as well. So it's a very complicated, let's say, facility that you have to manage. And yet, if nobody buys it, what do you do, right? So it's very much about, and this is where I think exciting new fronts like cellular agriculture will become really interesting, where you're actually taking a cell of an animal, putting it in an environment for it to grow without hormones, without anything, but you're not using arable land, you're not using feed, because if we look at our, let's say, meat industry, poultry industry, a lot of the lands are being used to feed those animals. And they could be lands that could be growing crops that we could eat directly, right? So, but it's all very much about a balance. We need to think of how we can reduce meat consumption, reduce dairy consumption, eat more vegetables, eat more nuts, and look more on plant-based as well. So it's, and then you have to think of the affordability as well. So it's really not as easy as it sounds, but I always think, Shema, what's important is that people need to realize that the subject of food security is not just a government responsibility, it's not a private sector responsibility, it is also us as individuals. When we go to the supermarket and we choose a food, that choice affects the food system.
Full circle.
Yes.
I want to go to the last kind of part of making food security a verb, or the, I call them the 301 kind of questions that we got.
Yes.
And this is where I got very excited about the power of youth to contribute real and innovative solutions in mobilizing kind of energy to address these kind of global challenges that you talked about in food systems. What can youth do to put us on a path to a better national, global food security food system? Like, how specifically can youth help with these kind of global end goals, if they were SDGs or your own ministries' KPIs and goals?
Okay, so I think it's really important. First of all, it's also our role to ensure that as a person goes through the journey of school and their education journey, that they also have access to nutrition and access to what food security is about. And we actually launched a first children's book called Food Security, Our First Journey. And we launched this, we sent it out to the schools, and we also got the kids to read it by doing a challenge for them. So design your own e-farm. As you know, kids are also very tech savvy, so they were allowed to use like Minecraft as a program to design their own farm. And believe me, this sparked so much excitement in them, because for them to research, for them to just find a little time to research, to find out about what they need as a farm, they need water, they need sun, they need people to work on it, and to understand how long that takes, and what it takes to design a farm, to manage a farm. This was such great insight for them that they also said, I look at food differently now. So a lot of them actually started growing things at home as well. So just these little things to spark a curiosity in them. Because we are a country that you don't see those large-scale agriculture happening outside. You see your food in the supermarket, right? So, and this is why this is really important. Also, we've tried also through our social media to kind of give insight to the public on ag tech companies in the UAE. So we're doing little shots of, let's say, the fish farm, the oyster farm, the blueberry farm, and we invite people and schools to come and visit these places so that kids can see and have hands-on or taste and see what it's about running a farm. Because we didn't have these before. Before it was the typical recreational farms, traditional farms, but now moving to technology farms or ag tech farms, they get really excited about this. Also, what's our role as well to help the youth in this journey and help us like uplift and ensure our food security is that we need to ensure that the journey of any person, that it has a kind of an outcome that they can look forward to. And if we want to now encourage ag tech, there's a lot of fundamental things we need to do in the country, which we're working on, so that if someone says, you know what, I'm ready to study, let's say, food biology or food innovations, or I want to become a plant biologist, or whatever it is in the field of ag tech, because they need these technicians, they know where they can work. And we're actually so proud. We had, there's a youth as well that just went into a private sector company, and she's helping in a tomato farm there. And for her, she's the first like Emirati going into the private sector. And this is the kind of thing we want to see. Having the youth going into these ag tech farms, where growing now in the desert is so different. And we are really looking at how we can ensure this pathway is smooth. The pathway has something where they can look forward to, because it used to be that our parents used to say, yeah, go into banking, real estate. Things have changed now. We need to look at different sectors, but these sectors are new for people. So they're kind of like saying, okay, if I do want to go down this path, can I make money? Can I have a good life for myself and my family? That's so important to know. What kind of salaries can I expect at the end? So this is what we're working on with all the stakeholders to try and ensure that that journey will help the youth say, you know what, I'm excited about this. I want to become an agri-technologist. I want to grow food in the country. I want to use technology and go down this path.
I love this. I love how it's also inspiring young kids to think about it and think about these challenges. The last question that we got from youth is they're very willing and eager to help, but they don't know how. What's one thing you want youth today to know about their potential to make an impact for you?
Okay. If I say one thing, try and look at your household and make it a point that everyone in the household does not put a single piece of edible food in the bin. When you do that, it's like a domino effect, because you start thinking of portion size, you start thinking of, okay, you start planning your food a little bit more. You think of, okay, if I have food that's still edible, who can I give it to, or can I eat it later? But it's really difficult, I'm telling you, because we're so used to our ways, but this would be the one thing, and it will affect everything.
I love this. This is a challenge we all need to do it. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for such a remarkable discussion, for guiding us through this field. I feel like I've learned so much, and for inviting us to have true action to it. I'm going to take that kind of pledge to try it myself in our household. And thank you to everyone, all youth, for all your questions, for your participation. This is, I know, is the beginning of great work to make the UAE and the world more food and water secure. And this is why I was very excited to present at the World Food Forum that invited youth on a joint challenge, Your Excellency, to every leader in every nation with a specific call to action. One, put youth at every table, in every arena and at every level. And I think this was a challenge that we asked everyone at the World Food Forum, and something I think we're starting in the UAE. I'd like to thank you so much. We're incredibly proud of the UAE's efforts in food security, let alone in inviting youth at this table. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shema. Thank you for having me. Really, it was a pleasure. Thank you, and thank you to everybody. Thank you.
Imagine the traction we can get as nations that become superpowers in empowering youth to learn and act. Imagine, as you go, enjoy your dinners tonight, whether with family or by yourselves. Think about Her Excellency مريم المهيري's invitation for how you can bring more equitable food security to the world. May the seeds we plant today become the food that feeds the world's tomorrow.